Right to buy. Yes, it's back again. It appeared in David Cameron's 2015 manifesto. I'm not sure really too terribly much happened after that, but we may have a cost of living crisis, but many people have simply nowhere to live. There are 1 million people on the waiting list for social housing. For many, many people, it isn't just generation rent. Many people, particularly in areas like London, can't even afford the rents. And they're living with mum and dad. We have a massive, massive housing problem. Is the government sincere? Is it on the right tracks? What are the lessons we can learn from the past? Well, Jeremy Leaf joins me, former residential chairman of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, North London estate agent, and a student of housing for many years. Jeremy, a quick recap on the 80s. Mrs. Thatcher comes to power 40 years ago, gives people in council houses the right to buy. Many take the option. They get houses at incredibly good prices. They were thrilled. They became Tory voters. I've knocked on the door of elderly people who say, we're so grateful to Mrs. Thatcher. And it all seemed to be, from my perspective, a fantastic success. But there was a problem, wasn't there? We didn't seem to replace any of them.
Well, that was the point. And it's the same again. The questions remain unanswered. How are we going to replace the stock? Most people accept there's that unanimity on the housing crisis is we don't have enough affordable housing. And it's all very well to have another new policy, which sounds very good, and it's always going to be very popular. But how are we going to replenish that stock?
So housing associations, that's what the government's saying. It's going to get housing associations to sell off their stock of property to people at, I say knock down, I mean relatively cheap houses. Does the government have the power to say this to the housing associations? I mean, if it was council houses, councils and government can do it. But when it's housing associations, it all seems pretty difficult and quite vague to me.
It is at the moment. We're short on detail. I think from a housing association perspective, they want to know how are they going to be compensated and how is their stock going to be refreshed, because they don't want to just give it away for nothing, and they want to know what's going to happen. We need more detail. What the discounts are going to be, what's the replacement programme going to be, will there be enough housing just to rent without buying, correcting some of the issues that weren't corrected before.
Did the 2015 manifesto pledge to do something lead to anything at all?
Very, very little. When we had a change of leader, Mrs. May came in.
Yep.
That seemed to coincide with that policy getting kicked in the long grass, and it was largely forgotten. But it's a very popular policy. It was quite interesting. In 1997, I was looking back at some of the... I'm old enough to remember all that. In 1997, when Labour came in, they didn't chuck the policy out. They didn't change it. They didn't because they knew it was a very popular policy at that time. Of course, the people who benefit were very happy to do so.
We have a population that is rising by about 500,000 a year. I mean, these are unprecedented rises in population. Yet we build 200,000 new homes a year. I mean, we're just about keeping up, but not really. So what's the answer to this? I mean, number one, with the housing stock that councils have, etc., housing associations, if they sell off, they've got to replace. I think we would all agree on that. We've learnt that lesson. But more generally, is it large-scale house building that we need?
Well, it's never one single policy. It's not one silver bullet. Yes, we do need to build more properties. Yes, we need to bring empty stock back into use.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to develop more on brownfield property. Yes, we need better, faster planning policies. We need a lot of things. Not just one policy is it going to fix it, but it may be a start if the rules are set right and the levels are right in terms of the discount and the stock is replaced. It could be a catalyst for other change.
And in terms of the private sector, governments giving local council areas and authorities targets, you've got to build 28,500 houses. And what we're beginning to see is political opposition at local government level to national government right across the country. And this big uptick in house building, it simply isn't happening, is it?
Not fast enough. It is. There's lots of good projects happening, and they are starting and coming on stream, but it's not happening fast enough. Otherwise, we would see it in the housing market figures, in the pricing, and we'd see the housing waiting lists coming down, not so many issues. I mean, I'm in the business every day of the week, have been for many years, and I don't see any changes particularly. I see some improvements, but not happening fast enough.
Is the housing market slowing?
Generally, in terms of it is a little bit, because prices will not won't go up as fast as they were, say, last year, because there's obviously great concerns about rising interest rates and inflation, and that's bound to affect confidence and to take on debt, and therefore the market will slow. But the overall shortage of property, which you alluded to earlier, is going to keep prices rising, albeit more slowly than they were previously.
Yes, I must say my feeling is the bottom, lower end of the housing market is propped up by demand that considerably exceeds supply. Is there anything hopeful you can say to young people out there who want to get on the housing ladder?
Well, if prices do level off a little bit, it is very, very tough for people, and not just in houses to buy, but to rent as well. Rents have gone up quite a lot. But I think this might create some balance. I think we need to get more stock on the market, that more building, as we said earlier, and that will help to keep prices in check and make it affordable. Because those young people, particularly at the bottom of the ladder, they are absolutely vital to it, because they trade up from the bottom rather than, say, investors.
It's getting that start, isn't it?
Getting the start, and it has implications for the rest of the market.
And one last thought on all of this. You know, politically, it's been suggested before that we stop foreign buyers coming in and buying up, you know, half an apartment block in London. It's very tough to do that and be a global trading nation, isn't it?
It is tough, and there has been talk of trying to stop that. Other countries have started it. But what a lot of people don't appreciate, there needs to be, it's all very well to do that, but you need to somehow substitute that initial investment, because often that initial investment, whether it comes from buy-to-let people or people who are based abroad, they often providing the finance to allow the rest of the development, maybe affordable housing as well, to get built. And if it didn't have that initial kick, it wouldn't happen.
So it can be useful.
It can be very useful.
Interesting. Jeremy Lee, thank you very much indeed for joining us.